to Sikorski's Thinkabouts. I'm your host, Laura Sikorski. Our show is geared towards the customer service, customer care, and technology areas of your call center. We try to have guests that are fully versed in those operational issues that you may be facing. And today our guest joining me is Tracy Holloman. Our show today is based on strategic planning and succession planning. Those are a lot of long and big words, but I know that Tracy is going to put them together in a show that I think will help you a lot. Through her career, which began in 1986, same year as I did, so we're probably, we passed ourselves as ships in the night say. And she has been instrumental in leadership and organizational development for companies. She's the managing partner of Purposeful Leadership Solutions, and which is a outsourced human organizational development company, meaning what do you do after you hire the person?
Absolutely.
And she develops coaching, making sure people are in the right place, how they can apply their skills to the new job or the new company that they are working for. And she has worked in various industries from nonprofits, health insurance, banking, IT, and defense contracting. So that's a pretty powerful client base. So let's just get started, Tracy. I've heard so much about you have to develop for the future. Something could happen to your company. So let's talk about what is a succession plan.
Actually, it's just a comprehensive plan that allows a business to continue on after key leadership positions have either gone away, or if someone retires, God forbid someone passes on, at least you have a pipeline of people who can actually fill those slots and still help the business to continue on even after that person is gone.
And that's got to be a scary thought, because we all think we're going to, live forever. And then what does happen when the main or the chief leadership either does pass, or you have a director who is a fabulous person of the call center, and then they're moving up to another different area of the company. So that can be a very scary thought.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So what are we supposed to consider?
Well, basically, when you are thinking about succession planning, you're thinking about the strategy of the business. You're thinking about business structure, processes, the people who are going to be operating in that business. You're also going to be thinking about reward systems and making sure that you're keeping your employees happy. But most importantly, you're thinking about leadership and whether or not they are able to run the business effectively and efficiently and actually touch customers in a way that is seamless. So we want people to understand that when you're doing succession planning, you're thinking with the end in mind, and that is the customer and keeping loyal customers so that that business continues to thrive.
And that is so important. It's the customer is the person that you have to keep happy.
Absolutely.
And your employees, if they're happy, they keep the customers happy. You also said about leadership, and I think leadership is extremely important in any business venture. How do you make sure in a succession plan, that you hire the right people?
Well, you can hire the right people, but you also want to look at the people who are actually in the business already. Where I find that most businesses fall awry when they're doing this succession plan is that they're so focused on the hiring. If you already have people in your business, you need to assess them and make sure that you're including them in that succession plan, because ultimately you want your employees to grow within your company, because it costs anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to hire an employee. Right? So why waste the money when you probably have talent already in your business that you can develop and get them into those key slots, or at least position them and give them the experiences and the training and development that they need to take on those key leadership roles.
And that is so important for our audience, I think, to understand, is many times we feel we have to go to the outside because nobody within our company has that capability.
Right.
And they do. It's just you haven't seen it.
That's right.
And I think that's a really important point to bring home. So, questions.
When do you realistically want to retire? If you're a business owner and you want to retire soon, you need to figure out, when do you actually want to retire? And the other thing too is that do you have everything in place that you need? Let's say, for instance, you're a large corporation. Are your departments running efficiently? Do you have people in place who can take on those roles? Are you financially sound? Those are questions that you need to consider. And also, who is going to succeed you? Again, this goes back to the people that you already have in the business, or if you know that you absolutely don't have the right people and there's no way to develop, it's going to cost more to develop than it is to hire, then absolutely go ahead and hire. However, you want to make sure that you're asking the key questions about departmental processes, people, and whether or not you are financially sound. But most importantly, when do I want to retire? I can tell you in larger companies, what they typically don't do is figure out, okay, I have these huge departments. I have a person who's been in this position for a really long time, and they're going to retire soon. I haven't prepared anyone to take on that role.
Right.
So you want to ask that question up front. When is this person going to retire, or is there a possibility that they could retire soon?
What's popped into my head is a lot of companies we both go into, there is no SOP.
Right.
And so if you're going to be retiring, how do you even go about developing an SOP? I mean, I've done things where it's like, hey, write down everything you do every day so we can see exactly what's happening and so forth. Get the staff to do the same thing. But how do you really develop that SOP?
You develop that SOP right up front.
Yeah.
I go into businesses all the time, and the first question I ask is that, do you have SOPs? Do you have standard operating procedures? Because nobody usually knows what an SOP is. And typically the answer is no, I don't. I have no idea, who does what. And I've seen situations where an operating procedure is not there. The person who was doing that particular process or procedure or knew everything about that particular area of the business, oh my goodness, they left the company, and they left the company in a lurch because
they didn't know what to do.
So what I typically do is go in and we talk about process mapping and getting those processes down from everyone in the organization and making sure that they make sense. Sometimes people have an operating procedure, it just doesn't make sense. It's too manual, it's very labor intensive, and they don't realize the impact to the customer ultimately as a result of that process.
Have you worked with companies that are family-run businesses?
Absolutely.
How do you, that to me, a succession plan has got to be difficult.
Yeah.
Have you come up with any really good ideas on, as many times it could be the younger sibling who is the running of the organization, and yet you want someone else to succeed you.
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Where the business owner wants one of their son or their daughter to run the business, but they really don't have the capability to do it.
They don't have the skill set.
They may not, they may be good technically, and this is where a lot of businesses fall awry, where they feel like someone is good technically, but they don't have the leadership skills and competencies to actually run the business. Sometimes they lack the vision of the organization. They know what the mission is, but they don't really understand the vision.
Yeah, that vision is very important.
Absolutely.
It's that, everyone has a mission statement. They're on walls and all that kind of stuff. But the vision, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years even?
Absolutely.
Where do you want to take the company? Do you want to keep it static, or do you want to do the innovation techniques that are out there today, new products, new services? So I tell you, succession is very scary. So let's talk about essential competencies. We did talk a little bit about the leadership and the transition. Let's talk about best practices. And that's a little bit like an SOP, but a best practice is very different. It's almost like a benchmark.
Right.
So what do you think about that in terms of succession?
I ask businesses to think about, processes and procedures, or let's say, for instance, you're doing sales and marketing. What's worked well for you, and what can you continue to do so that your business continues on, and how can we improve upon it? A lot of times when you're thinking about best practices, people, like you just said, think about just process, procedure, that's it. But when you're thinking about best practice, okay, yeah, that process or procedure might have worked, but I'm doing something a little bit differently, a little bit outside of the scope of that. which is actually yielding better results. Those are the things you actually want to document as well.
And I think too, when you're planning for succession, the most important asset in that company is your employees. So you really have to ask them, what is going right? What do we need to improve? What do the customers like? What do they don't like? What do they find confusing? Because the succession plan, you've got to make sure that everything is working, like a cog in a wheel.
Absolutely.
So that when you do leave, the transition is seamless. Nobody knows that anything happened, your customer base.
Right. And that goes back to developing employees, right?
Now, the other point that I thought was very interesting that you made was planning the development and retention of key persons. Have you ever run into where they know that somebody is leaving and everyone else says, well, I'm leaving too, and I'm leaving too, and you have this massive happy feet happening in the in the company?
I call it the mass exodus.
The mass exodus. Is that a norm?
It can be, and that's really around uncertainty. Anytime there's change within an organization, people become uncertain about what their roles and responsibilities are, and then how they fit into the change.
Yeah.
So you may see key people leave, So if you communicate up front and you let people know, what their role is going to be in the change, then you can plan for developing them, and they understand where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing, and then they have an expectation of development and opportunities to cultivate those new skills.
But it is a very scary thing. One of the companies that I physically worked for as an employee was going through a reorganization, and we found that the field got so nervous that their jobs were in jeopardy, which was not even the case. And so you had to put like Band-Aids quickly because we thought we had a great way of notifying everyone, and it just didn't happen the way we envisioned.
Yeah.
And so that was very scary.
Communication is extremely important when you're going through change. I've been in organizations where there was no communication and things just happened, and people, again, we had the mass exodus. But on the other hand, when you're communicating daily with your staff about what's going on, I had a manager who actually, would go into a meeting, and then immediately she would come out and she'd gather her staff together, talk about what the changes are, how they were going to impact the department and customers. So we didn't have that mass exodus. We had people understanding what the changes were going to be, how it impacted them, and where they fit into the change.
So, and planning. I mean, we all know planning, location, location, location.
That's right.
So when you run a business, you've got to plan. It's not something that grows on trees. You have to make sure it happens the way it needs to happen. So I love this little graphic, though. That was fun. Business strategy. What do you mean by tactical?
Tactical, the things that make the business run. Let's say, for instance, you know what the vision is, you need to know what the mission is, but are you working to the mission? Those things that make that mission happen are the tactical things. Business operations, processes, people, are they in the right slots?
So it's all those other areas within that organization chart.
Right.
You may be a lowly person on the very end of the rung there, but you are as important as everyone else is.
Right,
in
and
the
it's your core too. The tactical things are the core. Your HR department, your accounting, finances, marketing strategy, technology, all of those things are the tactical things that help your business to run.
Or your collections department.
Absolutely.
Making sure that you have money to continue to operate.
That's right.
So on the business structure side, we talked a little bit about this, but I think this is the one that is most important to me, developing management systems for peak company performance.
Absolutely.
A lot of companies, they have a ebb and flow type of a thing, and they never really operate at their best all the time. How do we guarantee that in a succession that's going to happen?
Well, again, it goes back to process, right? Documenting procedures and making sure that people are actually following them.
I was just going to say.
Right, which goes also in alignment with performance management. You also want to think about those processes and making sure that, maybe you needed to do a time study, to make sure that it's flowing the way that it should,
Right.
and where are the hiccups. Because when you determine what those things are, now you can fine tune those management systems. You want to make sure that you have the right people in place, again, to make sure that they are managing processes, managing people, and making sure that the flow is happening and that customers on the receiving end of those products or services don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right, right. I know a lot of times when you ask, well, why do you do that? What's the next step? What happens with that? And then you get a blank stare and going, I don't know.
Because they don't know.
I don't know. And that's one of the critical things I think in any industry today is the front office and the back office truly understanding what each other does and how they impact and influence the customer's decision, either the buying decision or the leaving decision, the loyalty decision.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about comprehensive marketing plan. What does that really mean? You know?
That means that within your mission, that you know how you're going to touch people to buy your product or service. Your marketing plan has to take into consideration how you're advertising, who you're reaching out to, you know, who's your target audience. What are your competitors doing? You know, taking all that into consideration. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the opportunities that are out there? And then what could potentially threaten your business? And you know, make sure that your marketing plan actually speaks to the strengths of your business and the opportunities that are out there to touch maybe a new market of people or, you know, other businesses.
It's true. I mean, again, you have to have a successful business. You always have to be reinventing, re-engineering, rethinking.
That's why
innovating.
A strategic plan
is
requires
important.
that you revisit it every 3 years.
Yeah. Every 3 years, really?
Every 3 years.
Oh.
I've seen people put together a strategic plan and they say, okay, we have it. Now what do we do?
Now it's in a binder in the executive's office, and nobody opens the book, and as you dust off the
they
dust,
dust it off.
you know. The process, you know, obviously how profitable is a business. I mean, that's income and expenses. That's the way the merry-go-round, right? You know, a lot of people forget that profitability is very important.
Absolutely.
And do you often run into cases where people don't know what their profit margins are?
A lot of times they don't.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they have no projections for profitability.
They don't do forecasting.
They don't do forecasting. They know
wow.
that they're running a business and they're living their dream, so to speak.
Right.
But they don't realize that you have to have some type of projections. What do you want to be doing in the next, 3 years, 5 years? Have a short-term plan, a long-term plan, and making sure that you're constantly growing as a result of it.
And we talked, the documenting of systems and procedures. I think you all out there get it. You got to document what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Certainly, people. Obviously, your key point here is the critical positions in the company.
Yes.
A lot of times I've found that presidents, chief officers, they think the company can't run without them, and they want to be involved in every aspect of the company. And they don't let the people do what they do best, and that is to manage the people and manage the products and services. But let's talk a little bit about how do you determine the skills that people need for a department? So if you are having a finance department, what do you look for? Do you look for a CPA? In a marketing department, do you look for somebody who's a graduate of Wharton Business School, type of thing?
Well, I typically look at where they went to school, if they've done some type of internships, what have they done in the company if they're already there, and how is that going to lend itself to growing the business.
Yeah.
I also do assessments. You want to take your jobs and develop competencies, and making sure that when you're recruiting, that those competencies are filled by the people that you're actually putting in those slots. So the competency models that you build for each position are key to making sure that you're hiring the right people and that the competencies are a match for what's going on in that department or within the organization as a whole.
Right, and that kind of is the same, that those words, hiring the right people for the right place at the right time.
Right.
And let's see, commit to developing internal talent.
Yes.
I mean, that's critical. That is the most important function for me in any type of a succession plan, is just developing the people you have. do the outside seminars, have people come in and talk to them about how to be a great employee or something like
Right.
that.
Training is an investment.
It is.
And a lot of times the training that, people say, okay, well, they need to be trained, but I'm not bringing someone in. I'm not sending them the training. They can do, training on the job. But what you're showing the employees, number one, is that you're not committed to their development. And
Right.
that means that they're not going to be committed to staying with your organization.
And
So
that's
take the
sad.
time to invest.
That is sad. So, folks, we're almost out of time, believe it or not. But let's do our final think abouts for today's show. A leader should always have a succession plan in place, regardless of your position.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it's important to you, for you, your company, and customers. Any final thoughts on think abouts? What one thing that our audience should take away?
That the planning is key to any organization being successful. You have to think about the strategy of your business, the structure, key people, your business processes, rewarding employees for the work that they do. Doesn't have to be a lot of money that you have to spend on it, but at least acknowledge and validate their existence.
Exactly.
And then think about your leadership and who's in those key positions, and also too how everything that you do impacts the customer in
Right.
the end.
And that's the most important, the customer. They're your lifeblood.
That's right.
Okay. We do have a Twitter question, and this is very interesting. Steve sent this out. How do I go about finding employees? Who are the ones that will help my business grow?
Okay, well, once again, you want to think about the people who are already in your business.
Okay.
Who are those people that always go above and beyond? They're good technically and they're good with people, because those are leadership traits that you absolutely need someone to have. However, if you don't have those types of people within your business, and you want to look outside, you want to, again, look at the competencies.
Right.
What are the competencies of the position? Has this person done this type of work before? Do they have potential?
And that's a critical word,
right,
potential.
potential.
You have to see through and look at what a person is saying to you during that interview process.
Right.
Or if there are an employee and you ask them a question, see if you could see the wheels turning and giving you an answer that is that's really going to benefit.
Yes.
Well, I cannot believe it, but we are almost out of time, and I do want to thank you,
Well,
Tracy.
thank you.
It was a great,
I really
great. Oh, your
appreciate
hands are
it.
cold.
Yeah, they're always freezing.
Goodness gracious. If you'd like to reach Tracy, you can do so. Her office number is 347-869-6296. And her email is Tracy, that's Tracy, at pls-ny.com. And she also has LinkedIn and all these other areas that we know about. We are so excited that, Tracy, you were able to join us today,
Well,
and I
thank
think
you.
you have some great think-abouts to take away from today's session. Next week, excited to have Lisa Renee Pomerantz. Lisa is an attorney, and she's going to talk about dispute resolution from the company side, employee side, vendor side, and what you need to do and to care about so that nothing happens to your business. So with that, I want to say thank you for clicking in, and until next time, have a perfect day.